Hey everybody, Dave Hagan here. Today I want to talk about cars, owning cars, paying for cars. I think we pay way too much and we take on too much risk. That's today on the Financial Wellness Podcast.
Welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to the financial success. Here is your host, financial problem solver and talk show host, Dave Hagan.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Financial Wellness Podcast. This is David Hagan coming to you from beautiful downtown Van Nuys. With me today, hey, it's Brian Reed.
How's it going, Dave?
I'm doing good. How you doing?
I am doing very well.
Good. So, cars. I want to talk about cars today. But before we talk about the financial wellness aspect of cars, a couple of stories. So, first story. I heard a story about a woman whose boyfriend needed a car, and they were in the process of moving in together, and he wanted a car or needed a car. I'm sure that's how it was presented. I need a car, baby. And he needed a car, but he had no money, he had no credit. And he figured that he could, no, wait, there's more. He figured he could pay a very healthy monthly car payment because, you know, he wasn't going to be paying rent because, right, they're moving in together. Makes perfect sense. So he talked his girlfriend into going out and the two of them got a car. And of course, the car ended up in her name because she had credit. And she agreed to sign a deal with payments of $850 a month. That's $850 a month. There's parts of the country where that's rent, right?
Easily.
$850 a month. So, of course, we can all see where this is going in retrospect. After a couple months, he decided he didn't like that particular car and went out and got another one using another friend's credit. And, you know, of course, he went out and got another girlfriend, and he moved out and they broke up. And now this lady is stuck with no help, paying for all of the rent and paying a monthly car payment of $850 a month. Now, she couldn't do much with this car because it was worth less than what the balance of the loan was. She couldn't pay the $850 a month. She had her own bill. She had her own car payment. She was really kind of left high and dry, and there really wasn't much she could do. And ultimately, she always was pretty careful about what she did, but ultimately she had to file for bankruptcy. So what are some of the takeaways from this story? Well, I mean, obviously her boyfriend, I think scumbag actually comes to mind, and she had problems with agreeing and being responsible for debt that she knew she couldn't pay as long as the relationship, if the relationship wasn't there, maybe they could have paid that if they stayed together, but she really didn't think ahead. Second story.
Is it going to be any better? I'm afraid it's going to be worse.
No, this one is maybe it's not worse, but because there's a happy ending, but it's appalling. We'll call this the appalling story. I've got a family friend, and she didn't have a car and decided that she needed one. She probably did. And so she had just gotten a raise at work, and she said, hey, I'll just go look around. So she goes out to a lot, and she finds a used car that she likes. She tells me it's a nice silver one. And, she checked her cell phone, and it was Kelley Blue Booking at $14,000 to $16,000. And then the salesman comes out and he says, hey, we can let this go for $15,000. And she's thinking she's got a really great deal. Now, she wasn't really there to buy a car. She was there just to kind of look, see what she likes, see what these kind of things cost. And out comes the salesman. So the first thing he does is he says, hey, what are you looking to pay per month? Now, that was probably her biggest mistake. Never talk to a salesman on a car loan and negotiate monthly payment. I'll tell you why in a little bit. But once you do, you've started down a dead-end alley that you will not be able to get out of. You will have no leverage in that negotiation. Now, check this out, Brian. She had been working on building her FICO score up, and she knew she was rocking about a 708 going in, which is, pretty good in the world of personal finance. And she, like I said, she'd been working to boost it up. And so the salesman comes back and he says, well, the search that they use shows that she only had a 587. And so that's when she first called me, and she says, hey, you're a friend of the family. I'm showing a 708, but they're saying it's 587 on what the car lot uses. And what do you think about that? And I said, that just don't sound right to me. What are you gonna do? So they offered to finance her car, and they said, we're going to do you a favor. Hey, don't walk away. We're going to do you a favor. And they said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to finance the car for you at $558 a month for 6 months, just for 6 months. Of course, it'll be a 3-year loan, but just do it for 6 months. And the interest rate, by the way, is 24.99%. Yeah, I know, right? 24.99, basically 25%. I think that's they used to call that loan sharking back in the old days. And then they said, hey, and then you can work on fixing your credit score. And when you come back with a better credit score in 6 months, we will refinance you at 2.99%, and your payments will be $287.
I don't believe this.
Yeah. I mean, this happened. I could tell you the name of the lot, but
you probably don't want to.
It wouldn't be cool. So she calls me on the cell again, this family friend, and goes, hey, what do you think's going on? And I said, run. Run fast, run real fast. I mean, obviously she decided to pass, but not everybody's fortunate enough to have a family friend, on a speed dial on a cell phone. And I'm afraid that a lot of people get caught into these kinds of things. So what can we take away from this appalling story? Well, one, never, never, never let a salesman start talking to you about buying a car based on monthly payments. Once you do, you've lost control of the situation. Always, always, always negotiate for a car based on the purchase price only. Once you're doing that, you're controlling the negotiation. You're controlling the situation. You can't out-negotiate somebody on financing because that's what they do for a living. And they will always run circles around you. But if you're talking about cost, just straight cost, if I write you a check, theoretically, how much will it take to walk that thing or to drive that thing off the lot? Now you are controlling that negotiation. And that's an important thing to remember. 2, in terms of takeaways, realize that the payment contract that you sign with the dealership typically will be sold to a bank. So you sign a promissory note that says, I'm going to buy this car from you for X amount of dollars, this amount of interest, and this is the monthly payments. They turn around and then sell that contract. They do this. They sell the contract to a financing source. And this is a big source of money for dealerships. In fact, I heard that recently they make more money selling their financing contracts than they make selling the cars. There's not a lot of profit in the sale of cars. They make their money on the repairs, and they make their money on the on selling these contracts. So what they do is they get you to pay 24.99 with so many payments over such a period of time on such an amount, and then they run to the bank and they go, look, I got this really high contract. What will you give me for it? And they go, oh, that's a good one. And it's a secured obligation because the car is posted as collateral to secure the debt. So it's relatively secure. And the bank will say, well, we'll pay you X, Y, Z. We'll pay you the face amount plus an additional amount because it's such a good deal. Another thing, once she signed the deal at basically 25%, that contract is not going to be something that she's going to be able to get out of. She would come back basically in 6 months and they wouldn't even know who she was. They go, oh yeah, well, are you going to buy a car from us today? No, I just want to refinance this. They go, we don't even know. Well, wait a minute. Where's Jerry? Jerry said he would, you guys could help me refinance it. Well, a dealership isn't going to refinance a car, for goodness sakes. You're not going to be able to change your credit that much in 6 months, for goodness sakes. And she would have been stuck paying the entire contract. If she couldn't get out of that contract, we did the math, she would have ended up paying $33,000 for a $14,000, $15,000 car. Crazy stuff.
Did she report them?
No. I mean, she's just that's not her style. But I think this happens a lot. I mean, I bought a couple cars off a lot over the years, and it's a dicey little gambit. I bought them privately. I bought them new. I bought used. From individuals, from dealerships, from lots.
I think I've hated every single experience of either buying or leasing a car because I just hate that feeling of I am not in control on this.
Right. That's what they do for a living.
These guys do it every day.
Yeah. They just have you for lunch. It's nuts. Now, that's why, as an aside here for a minute, there was a car line, what was it, Geo, which I think was a sub-brand of Chevrolet, of GM.
Geo Metro or something.
Yeah.
Or?
And it was like walk in, pay a price. They weren't going to negotiate. Teslas today, they don't negotiate. You walk in and they say, look at the car, look at the color, pick the type of seat that you want. They pop open a computer and you go 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's my credit card. That's the deposit, and you walk out. I mean, you could buy a Tesla in 5 minutes.
What's the big used car place?
Remax. Is that Remax?
No, can't remember. But I know that they're the same thing. It's like I actually went there once. CarMax. Yeah. That. Went there and I was like, okay, so this is the starting price. I was testing it and they're like, no, this is the price.
Yeah.
If you want to buy it, let us know.
Yeah. But yet they got a lot of car salesmen there too. So you gotta watch your wallet when you go in there too. But she would have never been able to get out of that vehicle. She would have.
Uncle Dave to the rescue.
Well, I'm just grateful that she was a family friend and she happened to have the phone number. And I was somewhere at a restaurant. And I stepped out for a second and said, I don't know that I would do this. So another little side thing, and this was a little tiny thing that was part of the story. Interesting though. A good takeaway: getting a raise is never a good reason to go out and buy a car. Now, I've done that before. Hey, I got a raise. Let's go out and get this. Let's go out and do that. I got more money every month to spend. No. How does that raise fit into your overall spending plan? Last time we talked about, what was it? Physically serious people, or FF, financially ferocious. What do we call those people?
Financially frugal?
No, frugal was the name
we were
trying
avoiding.
to get away from, yeah.
It'll come back to me.
It'll come back to us in a second. Anyway, the point was, it's not an excuse to just go out and spend that raise. Maybe it's an opportunity to take a look at that raise and see how that fits into your overall picture. Maybe it's an excuse to put that money into a savings or a brokerage account and get it to experience that magic of compound interest.
Oh, compound interest.
We've talked about it so many times on the podcast because we want people to look for it. We want people to love it. We want people to crave it rather than just spending money on stuff, especially in the case of a car, a depreciating asset. Better to make that money grow than to make it shrink and to pay a high price. So I guess the point is, even if you're pretty strong-willed, and that's the point of this story, if you're strong-willed, you can get talked into all sorts of stuff, especially with cars, especially in LA, especially up against a professional salesperson who's going to try and put you in a car and who's going to then try and finance it for you and get you to sign a contract that's over what the market interest rate would be for your credit rating, so that they can flip that and sell it to a bank and make some additional money. Crazy stuff. So let's get to the financial part of this then. How much should you spend on a car payment? Any thoughts, Brian?
Nothing.
Right? I agree. Absolutely nothing. We think that it's a bad idea to be paying car payments. Now, you walk into the lot and the car salesman's going to go, well, everybody pays $300. Well, in LA, everybody pays $500. And the answer is, not this everybody. I'm not going to fall into that. Unless you're swimming in cash, it really doesn't make sense to buy a depreciating asset, especially in assets that's brand new where it's really going to depreciate a ton. Maybe you buy a 3 to 4 year old car for cash if you can. That's a good buy, it seems to me. You'll pay about 50% of the original sticker price and let someone else have taken the majority of the depreciation on that vehicle, By the time a car's 3-4 years old, it's coming out of the warranty a lot of times, but they're still in pretty good shape. A lot of times, majority of the time, they're less than 50,000 miles on them. Mm-hmm. I've always thought in my mind that a car will run about 50,000 and then it's designed to fall apart, right? And so if it's under 50, I figure I got a pretty good deal, especially if it's something that I want, especially if it's, the right price. So our thought would be spend nothing. Spend nothing on a monthly payment if you can pull that off.
If you can do it, yeah.
If you've been able to save, if you've been able to put some money aside. Now, if you must finance, experts recommend that you hold your total transportation costs to not more than 20% of your take-home pay. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think that's a good guideline. A good guideline for housing is 30%, and if you add 30% and 20%, that's the 50% of your needs that we were talking about on those guidelines that Elizabeth Warren had put together in one of her early self-help books. Mm-hmm. Now, your needs are going to be more than 30% and 20%, but these are just interesting guidelines. These are goals. These are aspirations. These are part of your monthly spending plan. But 20% on your car payment, your gasoline, your insurance, your repairs, and your registration. And then when your car is paid for at the end of the contract, then I tell people, get ready for the gravy years, right? I mean, those are the years that you don't have a car payment, and those funds can be socked away to experience the magic of compound interest. How nice to be walking around town without a car payment. And your car should last 10 years. If you've bought it new, it'll last 10 years. Most cars will last 10 years. And if it's financed for 5 and then you own it for 5, now you're putting money away. You're putting money away for your next car, the car that you really want to get, that you're going to buy 3 to 4 years old. That money's compounding, it's growing for you, so it's getting bigger and bigger. And hopefully you've taken care of your car enough and you won't be experiencing significant repair bills for, a number of years here. Those are the gravy years. A paid-for car is a wonderful, wonderful thing.
Remember when I was in the accident right before my buddy's wedding? I got T-boned and the guy took off. Mm-hmm. That car was paid for. And when he was coming at me and everything slows down,
right?
One of the thoughts that went through my head was, it's paid off. I'm not kidding.
Not, this is going to hurt. My head's going to hit the dash. This is paid for. I know, right? And then to replace that car that's paid for, it's a hard car to replace because you got to shop for an older used car, which has all the other intrinsic issues with it. So you use the car as salvage value, and you go out and you're picking up some payments probably.
Yep.
Brutal stuff. Let's do some math. Let's take a $20,000 car, for example. And let's say you put 20% down. I like to put 20% down. It makes it a little easier. So you're putting $4,000 down on that car. Now, a $20,000 car is not that great of a car, right? If it's new. Mm-hmm. I mean, $20,000 is nothing. You could get a Honda, I guess, but it's not really much of a car. So you put $4,000 down on a $20,000 car, finance it for 60 months, your car payment's going to be about $300. Now follow along on the math. Car payment's going to be about $300. Insurance may be $150. Gas may be $150. Tags, repairs, well, let's say this is a newer car, figure $50. So add that all up. What is that? About $650, I think. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that means that $650 should be 20% of your take-home pay. Well, that means your take-home pay should be $32,000. And that means your gross pay, before you pay your biggest expense, which is your government's, your gross pay should be about $5,000. That means per month. That means your annual income should be $60,000. Now, bear in mind that the average income in the United States is $63,000. So to buy a $20,000 car, have a $300 a month car payment, you have to make at least the average income in the United States, and that's just average. That's just the average income in the United States. So for a $300 a month car that's going to be depreciating in value, now if this is a new one, and it'll be worthless in 6 to 7 years, and the average American makes enough just to buy a car for $300 a month. The average American makes enough to buy a $20,000 car. I don't see a lot of $20,000 cars out there on the freeway, and especially in California, especially near Hollywood, right? Everyone's driving the whatever. But give me a break. I think cars are way too expensive new, and it really sucks to finance them. I think it's a real problem. I think cars are just too expensive. I was looking at a Lincoln Navigator, which is, my God, that's a beautiful car. I think I've said this before. It's beautiful. It's big. It's, it gets 3 miles a gallon. It's wonderful. It's got all the stuff on it, but those are like rolling out at $80,000, $90,000. I mean, who pays for who does that? You get a Tesla for $80,000, $90,000. You get a Mercedes. Can't you get a Model S, S500 Mercedes for $90,000, something like that? I mean, these are, big luxurious cars, and yet to finance them, look at what people pay. Look what their annual income should be. And I'll bet you a lot of people driving those big cars don't have that kind of annual income.
Every now and then when I see a string of just high-end after high-end cars in LA, I wonder what their overall actual net value is personally.
Right.
I mean, can you actually everyone cannot afford all of these vehicles.
I mean, it just doesn't seem like it to me.
It's a giant Hollywood smokescreen.
Right. No, I mean, and everybody's posing and everybody's going, oh yeah, I was at the market and, I saw Jack buying tomatoes or whatever. I mean, they're not, but everyone's posing in Hollywood, and the vehicles are, a big part of that. It's crazy. Or maybe there's just so much money in the world and these people are dropping down cash on these big cars. I don't think that's the case though either. I think people that have money put away, I don't think they're running out buying new cars. I think they understand that those are depreciating assets.
It's kind of like the old money versus the new money.
Yeah.
Old money is calm about it and they're into saving it.
Yeah.
And making it grow.
Yeah.
Versus flaunting it.
Yeah, yeah. Let's look at another example of a car. You know what I'm going to talk about.
I know.
We love Elon Musk. Elon is the man. A Model 3. Mm-hmm. They're a little car that they're mass producing, and they're making a ton of these things. And you can get into a brand new Model 3 for about $40,000. So 20% down, that's about $8,000 down. Your payments are going to be about $600 a month for a little Model 3. Now, admittedly, that's a hell of a car, but let's do the math. You need to make like $80,000. Now, you're not going to pay for gas, and you're going to pay a little more for electricity, and you're going to pay almost nothing for repairs. We'll talk about that in a second, but let's do the math. The car payment's $600, insurance is $200, at least $200, because they go, you're driving a Tesla. Gas is $0. You're driving by the gas station waving and smiling, Electricity, $35, $45 onto your electric bill, maybe. Add that up, $835 a month that car is going to cost you to drive a Model 3. Now, we're not talking luxury car. The Model 3 is a kind of a basic, even though it's amazing. It's a very basic car. So it means your net pay is going to be, about $48,000. Your gross pay should be $70,000, $80,000. you're making $70,000, $80,000, you think you got it made. You don't think you're buying like a new Model 3, It's a little crazy. But I think that you've got to think about, with a new car, one of the things that I love about Elon, one of the things I love about the electric cars is when you're talking about electric, you have to consider that you're going to be paying no gas, so there's a gas savings. You got to figure that you're going to be picking up the electricity cost. You got to figure that the repair cost is going to go down, and you got to think about the longevity of the cars. The city of New York recently did an analysis of their fleet, and they found that their electric cars cost 25% to maintain, 25% compared to a gas car. So the electric car is very inexpensive to maintain.
But why?
Well, good question you ask. It's because there's hardly any moving parts. Think of that. There's no pistons, there's no push rods, there's no blah, 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 blah. There's a motor that spins.
That's right. It's not a hybrid.
Right. And wheels that spin. So that needs less lubrication, that needs less replacement. Because they have regenerative braking, they don't go through even the pads on the wheels as much. So they have the propensity of having that much less money necessary to take care of them. I've kind of experienced that with my car, with my electric car. There's just no upkeep. There's windshield wiper fluid, and there's sometimes some antifreeze to keep the batteries cool, and that's about it. And with these electric cars, we don't know how long they're going to last because they've only really been manufacturing them in earnest since 2013. But there's a fleet of Tesla cars in Orange County, and they rent Teslas out. So these cars are putting on like $350,000 a year. They're running them from San Diego to LA to Vegas and back. And they're finding that these cars are holding up even to 350,000 miles or more, right? Musk has said he's going to build a battery that'll last 1 million miles, which is the most concerning component of those cars. And if instead of buying a gas car that you expect to fall apart in
10 to 12 years.
10 years, yeah, right. Or at 100,000 miles, you get an electric car that runs forever and ever and ever, or 10 years, or 20 years, or 350,000 miles, or whatever it is. So you're going to pick up some kind of benefit there potentially. So, we're big fans. We love all those electric cars. It doesn't have to be a Tesla. It could be a Volt. It could be next year, 2020, there's about, I don't know what the number is now that I think about it, but several manufacturers that are come out with their own electric car. I think there's going to be 8 or 9 different models that are coming out. So that's something to think about when you're being intentional about your budget for transportation. There might be some savings there. Of course, the Teslas cost a lot more, so you're putting money up front.
More up front, and then banking on you'll have it longer without payments, without the having to fix it, hopefully, as well.
Right. Now, here's where I'm going to be a little critical of Elon. He says, well, you're going to be saving gas, so factor that into the payment so you can pay a little more car payment. No! I want that gas savings to be put in my pocket, not Elon Musk's pocket. But that's one of the ways they justify the price, Well,
what about a financing deal? If you can, get a low financed amount or 0, or what do you think about that?
Well, I think there's manufacturers out there that are doing 0% financing. I actually did it one time a number of years ago. It was like 72 months, 0%. And I was gonna write the check. It was a Chevrolet Volt. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, just what's the price? We're going to write the check. And they said, you want to finance it? No, I don't want to do the contract. I don't want to deal the credit report. And they said, but if your credit's good, we can do 0% financing for 72 months. I said, so you're going to loan me money for 72 months at 0. And then I did the math, and I'm going, well, that'd be kind of nice. Now, the car wasn't that expensive, so what I was going to be saving in interest wasn't that much. That didn't impress me enough to say, well, I'll take on payments. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to deal with payments. But then they said, catch this. If you finance it at 0%, we'll take another $1,000 off the purchase price of the car. And I said, no, let me understand this. You're going to pay me $1,000 to finance at 0%? I did. Nice. I did. I mean, they hooked me. I'm supposed to know better, and yeah, they brought me in. But usually 0% financing is only going to be on, new cars. The financing on used cars isn't going to be as much. So, as much as I got a great deal, and as much as they reduced the price or gave me $1,000 on the purchase price, it was a new car, and it saw some pretty good depreciation. I had that car for 5, 6, 7 years, and it depreciated. I think we paid like $37,000 for it, and so it did depreciate pretty good. Well,
what about like a 4%?
Well, you might be able to get a 4, 5, 6 on a used car, something like that, and then you do the math and you go, wow! But if I had the money in my account, experiencing the magic of compound interest, wouldn't that be pretty good, right?
Compound interest.
I know that's like one of our main mantras here. But, I mean, maybe that's something to think about if you're going to think about the spread between those two interest rates. But you have to factor in the fact that, if you're getting 10% on your investment, you're going to have to pay tax on that. So 10% might be factored back to 6 or 7%, and the spread between 4 and 6 or 7 isn't as attractive. You got to factor in your uncle. You got to pay your uncle, But maybe something to think about. So let's talk a minute about the bad stuff. What if you agree to buy a car? Like the first story that we have, you agree to buy a car, and later you can't pay. Maybe you lose your job, you become disabled, your boyfriend moves out, whatever. Well, in most states, what's going to happen is this: they're going to repossess the vehicle. So basically, they hire some guy to come grab it in the middle of the night, and they tow it away. The vehicle's sold at an auction, and they don't sell it for much because people understand they're going to get a deal at an auction. They bid it up a little bit, but it's still way less, and almost always less than the balance of the loan. The system's designed that way. They use the auction proceeds to pay off the balance as much as possible on that loan, and then they come after you for the unpaid balance. It's called a deficiency, and they'll sue you for that. So what would happen to the lady in the first case? They'd grab that car, they'd take it, they'd sell it, and they'd come back at her. I mean, I've seen deficiencies for, $5, $10, $15, $20,000, and they're going, "Hey, just pay me." And like I've got that money just sitting around, and they sue you for it, and that's what pushes people into bankruptcy sometimes. So, what are some of the takeaways from this conversation? Well, first and foremost, the biggest thing, the number one thing I want people to think about: buy a car that's 3 or 4 years old. Get the car that you really want, but buy it 3 to 4 years. Only pay cash for a car if you can. Realize it's a depreciating asset. Save money. Save up money, ahead of time. If you can. Hard to do. It's hard to have that discipline, but if you can, you're going to get a better deal. After you buy that car for cash, start saving money for the next one. And again, put it in an account so it can experience the wonderment of compound interest.
Oh, compound interest.
I love that stuff, right?
I don't know why I'm doing that so much tonight.
This is just compound interest day or something. Factor out all the costs, including the repairs, and think about the potential savings too. This all isn't bad stuff. I'm not a fan of leasing because you end up owning nothing. There's no residual ownership at the back end. Leasing is just a payment. It's a rental agreement, basically. So, I'm not a fan of leasing, but maybe if it's your first car, if you can lease something with the lowest possible payments while you're saving up for the next, yeah, maybe. Consider driving an eccentric car, a Porsche 914 or a VW Bug or a Carmen Ghia or I don't know what else. Consider driving a funny car, a conversation piece like a Ford Pinto. I drove a Ford Pinto for 3-4 years. It was like international safety orange, right? And,
good grief.
And the hatchback stopped working, so I cut off a broom handle, and I would use that to hold up the hatchback. That was a good car. It was a little dangerous maybe, but it was a good car.
Didn't they blow up?
They blew up when they got hit from behind, so you just make sure no one's doing the rear ender there, But factor in repairs and safety. Consider a motorcycle, consider a scooter, consider Uber Lyft. I know several people who've decided just to go Uber Lyft because they don't have a car. There's some reason why they can't drive, so they just Uber Lyft. And I think finally, shop the daylights out for your next car on the internet. You can find cars from anywhere, and you get the car that you really want with the right miles, and keep shopping around if you've got the ability to shop. I got my last car in Seattle, and I flew up there and checked it out and drove it around, and then it paid about $600 to ship it from Seattle to LA. But it was worth it to me because I got what I wanted. I got exactly what I wanted. So something to think about. Or even another example, lease that first car. I had one car that I leased for 3 years, $229. And it was a Chevrolet Volt, $229. I was there to write the check. And the guy goes, well, you could lease it. I said, I don't do that. And he goes, well, it's $1,000 down, $229 a month. And I go, $229, no gas, no repairs because it's warranty. And then I give it back to you. I had to keep miles off it. I couldn't drive it to Vegas every weekend. But $229, that's like almost driving for free. So I don't know. Some stuff to think about. I wanted to talk about cars, get this information out. It's been bugging me because I see all these cars driving around. I'm wondering, what are all these people doing? I see people getting hurt out at the lots, making deals that aren't a good idea. So I don't know. That's what I wanted to talk about with cars today. This is Dave Hagan, and you've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast.
You've been listening to the Financial Wellness Podcast, Dave's weekly message to keep you on your path to financial success. If you have a question that you would like Dave to answer on the podcast, go to thefinancialwellnesspodcast.com. You can leave an audio message with one click of a button, or type your message into the question box. Either way, it's sent right to Dave's phone. Remember, Dave will randomly draw from the submitted questions and pick the winner of a free 1-hour personal conversation with Dave to help you achieve your financial goals. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so you receive the new episode notifications, or share the podcast via the app with your family and friends. This is your announcer, Nick Appel, wishing you every financial success.